After a long quarantined winter of getting my groceries delivered to me by people who don't know how to pick out groceries and just picked out the most wilted, rotted, oldest vegetables on the shelves, I just couldn't take it anymore. And when the weather got nice, the one thing I wanted to do the most was figure out how to grow as much food as I can in the space that I have. And to me, my biggest pain point with grocery shopping most of the year is getting good quality lettuce. I am just constantly disappointed by the quality of the lettuce you find in the supermarket, and that's mainly because most of this lettuce is coming from California. If you're on the East Coast, that means lettuce has to be driven across the country, distributed at all the supermarkets. It's gonna stay on the supermarket shelf for, who knows, a week, and then you're gonna take it home and it's gonna sit in your refrigerator for a week, and it's like at that point it's a month old. How good is it gonna be? What's the nutritional content? It's a big problem for me. So when I was thinking about how I'm gonna build a garden in my backyard, if I'm gonna build a raised bed, which is what I did, then it really kind of made sense to create a high density or figure out a way to commit most of the raised bed or most of your growing area to the one thing that is your biggest pain point. And for me, that's lettuce. You can't make good inspired salads if you don't have good quality lettuce. So took it into my own hands, built this raised bed, and focused it almost entirely on lettuces. But first, let's talk about the bed. Essentially, I have a 9 by 2 by 2 raised bed. What kind of wood is this? I don't know. A 1 by whatever? I'm not a carpenter. I had to get this thing made. I don't know much about woodworking, so I hired people to help me make this bed. Obviously, it'll be cheaper for you to make your own, but if you don't, it'd be great to hire somebody, stimulate the economy. You know people would love some work right now. So I didn't give these guys any instruction other than the dimensions of the raised bed I needed. They designed and put together this really sturdy raised bed. So I have this weed plastic barrier that I sort of line the inside of the bed with. It's not necessary, but it's nice because it's got little holes in it, so it's got good drainage. It creates a barrier for weeds, so there's no weeds gonna start growing up into the bed. And since I'm gonna get really good quality organic soil, I can have this nice sort of isolated environment in which is nice and controlled. The soil is all controlled and it's all the same. And you just wanna make sure that you have a little slack in there, otherwise you're gonna tear it all up when you start to add all the soil. So speaking of the soil, I need a ton of it. This is 9 by 2 by 2, so that's, I think, 36 cubic feet of soil that's required. So I found a store that would deliver 18 2 cubic foot bags of Coast of Maine organic soil, which is really good quality soil. And I think I had to return maybe 4. At the end of the day, I think I needed around 30 cubic feet of soil to fill the bed, plus more to fill up all the pots and various stuff that I have around. So I just filled up the bed with that soil until it almost reached the top. Apparently lettuce is like really aerated soil, so the roots can grow nice and deep. Now, while I was looking for soil, I was obviously going from store to store getting as many lettuce seedlings and tomato plants as I could to eventually plant in the bed when the soil came. So I have a whole bunch of stuff ready to go. When the soil comes, I can start to orient and figure out the spacing of the plants that I'm gonna want. This is more of a documentation rather than a teaching, as I'm still learning all of this stuff as well. I'm following a lot of great YouTubers who talk about gardening, and I'll leave links down to their channels below so you can start to learn some of the things that I'm learning as well. So now that I have my seedlings and my soil in, I can start to plant. The first thing I planted are marigolds. Marigolds are used to ward off insects, and I think their roots prevent any sort of kind of bad stuff from happening inside. So I plant those in and around the garden. So the first thing I got to planting were these red romaine leaves. Just get it out of its little pot and then break up the roots, open them up, get them into a little hole in the soil, and then pack them up. Not too tight. And I only had 3 red romaine plants, so then I just did the same to the green romaine. Now over here I have the ruby red lettuce, I would have definitely planted them closer together so that they could self-support each other. I think I planted them a bit too far apart, and some of the outer leaves kind of touch the moist soil, which is not a good thing. And then over here we have my favorite lacinato or Tuscan kale. Those look like I kind of planted 2 in 1, so I'm going to see if I maybe planted them too close. That might be an issue. And then finally over here we have some beautiful arugula. And that is the bed, and everything's been growing pretty well except for the ruby red. The ruby red's been a little hard to grow, and I think it's because they're too spread out, so everything else has been able to kind of be raised above the soil and have nice healthy production. And what's good about this bed is you start to see the shade starting to roll over, and it's about 1:30. So in another hour or so this whole bed will be covered in shade, and then I can give it a quick watering so that it cools it off, because today is a bit of a hot day. The one thing about growing lettuce is that it really doesn't like heat above like 75 or 80 degrees. So the fact that it is a lot of shade is kind of good, but we want to keep this soil really moist, which it's not. It can feel the soil is really hot, which is bad for the roots. As long as we keep the soil nice and cool and moist, it's going to be a good 20 degrees cooler than the outside temperature and keep the lettuces nice and healthy. If the lettuce gets too hot, then you run the risk of it bolting, which basically means it starts to develop flowers and it gets all bitter and starts to get kind of no good to eat. So when the shade hits these, I'm going to give them a nice cool down. Now I have tomato plants. These are cherry tomato, brandywine, and over there is this kind of early producing patio tomato plant. And these guys are in these self-watering potters. These are really effective. They hold water down at the bottom and the plant sucks it up as it needs. So this really holds moisture well. Tomatoes seem to be a whole nother discussion, so we'll talk about those another time. This is another self-watering container, and in this one we grew strawberries. Actually, I just harvested my first one last night. Next up, I planted my basil. I have regular sweet basil and some purple basil. And I just planted it in sort of a big window box like that. Then I have another one of those planters, and in this I planted rose thyme, English thyme, German thyme, rosemary, and some of these carrot tops. So these are some green carrot tops growing right there. I also have some marjoram here. And these are sort of used celery heads that I just started to regrow in a pot of soil. Celery leaves are some of my favorite for salads, so you can use marjoram in salads and celery leaves. Delicious. And I just picked up some more mint for my strawberries. Those are gonna go well with the strawberries. I have some oregano here, because why not? I got some hot banana peppers growing over here and some hot cherry peppers.
Now this is all a work in progress. As I said, I would do some things different. I would try and pack these closer together. You really have to take a look at the sun. You gotta be able to map how the sun moves across your bed and then be able to make decisions on planting based on that. But I can start to harvest this lettuce right now and then maybe midsummer start to grow more. But I'm pretty confident with the basil. Basil's looking beautiful. Strawberries are looking pretty good. We've got some nice strawberries growing right here. This tomato plant is starting to produce tomatoes. If you can see under there. We got some cherry tomatoes growing into the cherry tomato plant, which I'm excited about. We got some peppers growing. I feel pretty good about this. So like I said, there's a lot I would change about the process. Essentially, this whole pandemic sort of created a more rushed version of this, as I would have liked to figure out how to start everything from seed. I'm just happy to kind of get this up and running, so at least I can enjoy some fresh tomatoes, some fresh lettuces, without having to worry too much about going to the farmer's market or the supermarket, and just trying to have as much control over my food as I can. Hopefully you're inspired to start a garden, get outside and just get your hands dirty. I think right now, during these times, it's really something soul satisfying that we could all benefit from if you've got some space. So what else can I really say? Get out there, get some soil, start growing stuff. Hope you enjoyed my little farm tour. I can't wait to start eating from it. I've already had a strawberry. It was beautiful. Thanks so much to my patrons scrolling up on the screen right now. We'll get back into cooking, I know. It's just, it's been hard to focus and it's been hard to work, and I think I'm gonna slowly start to figure out how to get back into my rhythm. So thanks for hanging in there, thanks for supporting me. I love you all. That's all that I have today. I'll see you next time. Until then, take care of yourself and go feed yourself.